Fantastic. Hello, everyone. My name is Walker Matalozo. I'm the president of Oregon State EERI. Well, technically, Annabelle is still the president, but I will be and I'm assuming the role's right here. Welcome to our grad school panel Q&A. Basically, with this event, we just kind of wanted to share our experiences going through grad school to help you decide if it's right for you. It can be really challenging, and it is challenging, but I've really enjoyed my time. It's been a struggle sometimes, but overall, I'm glad I made this decision. And I hope that through your questions and our answers, we can shed some light on any doubts or questions you may have. So basically, what I want to do now is just introduce our panel to give a little bit of background information on that, and then we can move forward. So Annabelle, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Annabelle Shepard. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am in the second year of my master's program at Oregon State, and I'm doing a dual civil engineering and wood science program. So if you have any questions about whether or not to select a dual program or what that process is like, then I am the person to go to for that. And then during my time at Oregon State's grad school, I participated in OSTEM and then EERI, which you all know. So club questions too.
Great. Kelsong, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Kelsong Nima, and I'm in the final stages of my MEng program here at Oregon State. I did the accelerated master's program, so if you're interested in that program, feel free to ask me some questions. That's about it.
Great, thank you, Kelsong. Stephanie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Stephanie. I did my undergrad at OSU and now have been doing my graduate degree at Oregon State in civil engineering. I'm in the structural engineering program, and I'm also in my final year and should be finishing up in the summer. One thing that I guess everyone's pointing out unique things about themselves. So one thing, I did CCOP in my undergrad at OSU. So I actually started the grad program a term late. So if you have questions about, first of all, how to get into grad school a term late, possibly, I don't even know if that's allowed anymore. So we can just talk about that.
Great, thank you. Brian, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Brian, he, him, his pronouns. I'm in my second year of Integrative Biology PhD program here. And one thing that maybe makes me special is my undergrad was in math, and then my PhD is, I mean, technically it's in biology, but I use a lot of math. And so if you're looking at programs that maybe feel like they aren't the exact same thing as your undergraduate major and what that looks like.
Perfect, thank you. Alyssa, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alyssa Kotash. I use they, them pronouns. I am a fifth year PhD student in my final year, thank goodness. And I am in the geology program, the College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences at Oregon State, and I study underwater volcanoes. I guess for me, I also did my master's in underwater volcanoes, so I kind of had a path that I had chosen, but it's kind of interesting of how I got there. So if you have questions or if you think you have a direction but you're not sure if you should go for it, I could help with that. And then I also do a lot of social justice work on the side to kind of keep me sane and to keep my life balanced and my learning experience at OSU. So if you have questions about that, that'd be great.
Perfect, thank you. And then finally, Whitney, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Whitney Korthauer. I'm the graduate program coordinator in civil and construction engineering. So I can answer kind of any questions you have about the application process or admissions. Stephanie mentioned CCOP. I can help with those questions as well. I was the head advisor the undergraduate advising. So I know a lot of students that have continued through the AMP program, like Kelsang mentioned. So I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Perfect. Thank you all. I'm so excited. So everyone, basically how this is going to work is in order to streamline and avoid distractions, all questions will be asked in the comment section. So if you don't know how to do that, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a bubble that says chat. You can click that and then it will type a question. Ask your questions here. And then we will go through and answer your questions to the best of our abilities. And this event will be recorded just in case you forget, I don't know, an answer and then want to go back, or if a friend of yours wasn't able to make it, they can come and watch the video to absorb all this great information. So yeah, without further ado, please ask your questions and we'll be here waiting. I wonder, are people going to ask questions? Well, as we wait for people to ask questions, I have some questions that I can ask. So I guess my first question is kind of an easy one, but oh, here we go. How feasible is it to work while completing an MS degree, specifically in civil engineering? I don't personally work right now, but basically, Annabelle, do you have any experience on this?
Yes, I can talk about this. So I'm assuming that the person asking the question, and just so everybody knows, only Walker can see the questions, so everything will be channeled through him if you want to have a follow-up. But so I'm assuming that this question is about working outside of school, so part-time job that's apart from the research that you're doing. And I would say if you have the option to not do that, you should not work in addition to the work you're doing at school. School and then the added either TA or research responsibilities that you take on are going to take up almost all of your time. And just from my experience, I couldn't imagine adding on even a part-time job on top of the work that I'm already doing. And when I was in undergrad, I worked 2 different part-time jobs and I made that work. I absolutely could not do that now. So that's my answer.
Yeah, Kelsang, do you want to touch on this?
Well, I mean, during undergrad, I was able to do a part-time internship during my senior year, and I was able to do that. But even doing an MEng, I didn't do research. But I was pretty loaded up on classes every term, and that took up a lot of time. Like, especially with the hard classes like structural dynamics, I couldn't imagine working a job during that time. So I would say if you have the option not to, I agree with Annabelle, you should really focus on your work because that will essentially be a job for you. And I'm not sure who you'd want to talk to if it was something that you had to do, like to make ends meet. So I would say if you have the option not to, you should avoid it.
Yeah, thank you. Stephanie, do you have anything to add to this?
I agree with what everyone else has said. If possible, I would try not to work. I understand that it's difficult for people who need the work to get funding. My boyfriend actually worked during his degree, and so that basically meant either you're taking on less responsibility with research, and so you have, if you're doing a thesis-based degree, then you're taking less responsibility with research. So maybe your project won't involve experimental work. If that's something you're looking forward to, you're going to need the time to be able to do that. And I don't think you can achieve that also doing a part-time job. So
Yeah, Alyssa, do you have anything?
No, I mean, I think everyone kind of covered what I felt as well.
Okay, cool. Brian?
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that like being a TA does give you an income, and so uh, that in itself is essentially a part-time job. So if you weren't TAing, at least for me, I feel like if I wasn't TAing, I would require spending that time having a job somewhere else and would be able to. It takes up easily 20 hours a week. There's also ways to get funding, getting a salary. So like the GRFP, NSF, you can apply for it once for free as an undergrad. Also, again, you get one shot as a grad student, and that gives you like 3 years of like a $30,000 salary. So there are ways to get that income in the realm where I think it's manageable with your time without necessarily also like working at a cafe or something. But that being said, if you can get that funding without working, the less extra things you have to do, definitely the better.
Yeah, and to the person who asked that question, if you mean like some people work and their firm helps fund their graduate work and finding that balance, I'll email you and ask you if you want, because I do know some people that do that are working and doing a Master of Engineering program, which doesn't require research or thesis, and I could send you their way to kind of get answers. Some of the topics lead well to this next question. Could someone explain how being funded for grad school works? I am curious how much it costs to attend grad school and how much debt I should expect to accrue over time. Thanks. So I think going to school in debt are something that a lot of us know about. So Annabelle, could you touch on that?
Yeah, Walker, would you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
No, absolutely. Basically, the question, could someone explain how being funded for grad school works? I am curious how much it costs to attend grad school and how much debt I should expect to accrue over that time. Thanks.
This may be best answered by Whitney, but from my end, I didn't have to worry about my tuition while I was here because I was working with who became my research advisor during my undergrad, and she offered to pay for my tuition plus a stipend for the work that I was doing for my research. So I never had to go through the process of finding funding to cover my tuition and didn't have to worry about accruing debt in grad school.
Kelsong, I know that unfortunately to single you out, you're doing the MEng program, and so I think you are paying for this. Could you answer on your experiences on this question?
Yeah, so mostly I've been able to pay off a lot of the extra costs of my MEng with just through money I saved up through internships. So I would definitely say that you should all consider getting a paid internship over the summer. And I think that most of you are absolutely capable of doing that. It's a great way to get some experience before for, you know, when you get a job and experience for your research. And yeah, so that's how I paid for most of it. And in terms of loans, and because of the savings I was able to get, I didn't have to take out many loans for it at all. So I'm sitting pretty nice with in terms of money I'm paying for grad school.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie, do you have any advice for finding funding?
Yeah, so like maybe we should have Whitney talk first.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sure. Hey, Whitney, could you lend some advice?
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to say with the GTAs and GRAs, when you apply to grad school, there's not an additional application that you have to complete. If you're applying for an MS or a PhD, you're automatically reviewed to be funded through either a GTA or a GRA. The other option, I'm not sure where everyone is, at their level during their bachelor's degree, but if you've looked into the accelerated master's program, you can actually knock off some of those credits and then actually transfer them into a graduate program. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely Google accelerated master's program. And then the other thing someone mentioned, the cost of grad school. If you Google tuition tables, Oregon State, then you can look at that pretty easily and it'll give you a breakdown of what the cost is.
Yeah, I just want to comment on those tuition tables. They were very, very helpful in helping me budget. So definitely take a look at those.
Okay, now I can share maybe.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So yeah, so I guess like how I understand, there are like a few options, main options for funding. Either you're like a GTA, so you're a TA for a class, so you're grading papers, maybe running recitations, depending on class responsibilities, that kind of thing. You can be a graduate research assistant. So basically your advisor has funding for their project, and basically they write in to fund a graduate student for their project. So I'm like in mine and Annabelle's case, our advisor have written us into their funding proposals. So we are graduate research assistants. We get paid through the funding that she's received for the project, and that pays for tuition and a monthly stipend. And then there's a third option, which Brian mentioned earlier, like getting a fellowship or a scholarship. So I had that my first year. And that's really great. Usually those pay, or at least the one I got, paid a little bit more than being a GRA. And that paid for tuition and a stipend as well. One thing I will say is, I don't know how many of you all will be actually going to grad school at OSU, or if you're looking at other schools. I think it's much easier if you're looking to go to grad school at OSU. It's much easier if you reach out to professors now who you want to work with. Then they'll get to know you and they'll more likely want to fund you and want you to stay. So if you get those connections out early, it's a lot easier to get funding that way. I'm not sure how it is if you're trying to go to a different school. It might be more difficult. And like Whitney said, you'll be considered for a GTA position, but it's not always guaranteed because they are limited for every year. So.
I'm muted. Alyssa, do you want to touch on this?
Yeah, this is a good question because at least for me, when I was applying for graduate schools, both for my master's and my PhD, that was my number one concern, was how was I going to afford this? And kind of what Stephanie pointed out is I did that for when I applied. I made a list of professors that I would consider working with, whether it be a base of like, for me, I was interested in volcanoes. So I actually just figured out what schools had volcanologists there, and I had an email template saying that I was interested. And then once that correspondence began, I asked questions such as, is there funding available for me? Will there be a TA-ship? How is your lab group working? Things of that sort. So it's not a question to throw out there in the first email because you're trying to build that bond, but that's certainly part of this conversation, is that being a student, you need to know, how am I going to finance this education? And there's certainly opportunities. I TA'd my entire 5 years that I've been at OSU and for my master's as well. And it was tough, but that is exactly how I got through it. And all my tuition is covered, and I get paid to TA. So that's kind of how I finance that.
Fantastic answer. Thank you. Brian, do you have any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, so one thing that's worth looking at is whether or not you can get a TA varies not just from like school to school, but from department to department. So having a TA-ship is guaranteed in my department. So I have guaranteed funding for the duration of my PhD program here. Other folks in my department might find fellowships to supplement and then not have to teach. but no one is paying for tuition. So when you identify a program you're interested in, that can be a major player in not even what school you want to go to, but what department and specifically like person you end up wanting to apply to work with.
Perfect, thank you. Some of you kind of touched on this next question, but I think we could go a little bit further into it. So essentially, how do you know if a university will be a good fit? I know a lot of the panelists started at Oregon State and continued on to Oregon State, but I guess we can go through and kind of look at what made you choose to stay at Oregon State versus applying elsewhere. And how did you know that it was a good fit? I'm guessing that's what this question is. Annabelle, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't consider other universities, so I cannot speak to that part of the question. Ultimately, my decision to go to Oregon State for my master's came down to the fact that I thought I had a good fit with my advisor. And that was because I had already been working with her on the research project that ultimately became my thesis for about a year. And so I think the process of determining whether or not something is a good fit ultimately comes down to you. But for me, it was, I enjoyed the research and I knew the person that I was working with was a person that would help me develop not only as a student, but as a person and as a professional. And I knew that it was too good an opportunity to pass up. So that was what it went into my own personal decision.
Thank you. Kelsum, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so really it was the accelerated master's program. I wasn't really interested in spending 2 extra years here. So the fact that we had that new platform for me to get ahead and get my MEng quickly was a big thing for me, just to get out and get into the workforce as quick as possible. So that the fact that Oregon State had that, I did my undergrad here, so it made me want to just stay here and continue on that route. So that's the reason I stayed.
Stephanie.
Yeah, so I also did my undergrad here, so it's a little bit of a different story, but I guess I was actually considering applying to other schools because, like I mentioned previously, I was in the CCOP program, so the second internship goes through fall term. And at the time, I think it was the first year that OSU wasn't admitting late admissions in civil engineering. So I kind of like took it as my loss and thought I had to apply somewhere else. But because I had that connection with my advisor from undergrad, she saw potential in me and I guess finagled my way in. She saw this fellowship I could apply to, and she made sure that I was able to start late through the admissions and stuff. So that's kind of how that worked out for me.
Great. Alyssa, do you have how did you ended up selecting here, I guess, on your quest?
Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of pigeonholed in the sense of what I study. And so Oregon State is the only PhD program that I applied to. However, I did my research in terms of contacting my former advisor about opportunities and teaching and all that. And I had correspondence with him over 9 months in advance, just because I wanted to make sure that we went through all that process and I knew that there would be support there. And in terms of like, if it's a fit or not, it's kind of a tough situation because there's going to be a lot of circumstances that change. And for example, I didn't look at OSU in terms of if it could support me and my identities and how I exist as a grad student. But I kind of created that community around me. So if that's like a hesitant, I guess like for me, if I'm reading that question correctly, like if there's any hesitation, like, oh, I don't know if the school can support me in like how my identities intermingle with grad school, that definitely can be at the forefront of things, but know that you could also make your own space with that. And I did say that I switched advisors. And so if anything, it's really important to have that connection with that advisor because that is your support. And so it is possible if that just breaks down, you can find other support within your college, or you go to a different university. So there's ways to navigate that kind of boundary, and it's not something that you kind of should just throw away, like, oh, I don't think it's a good fit. Like, think about why that is, and then how maybe that could challenge you to find avenues to support yourself also through that process.
Any thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, my grad application process probably looks more like what most people watching is, where I applied to 7 grad schools. I got into 3 of them and had to choose. So I was choosing between University of Massachusetts, where I did my undergrad, the other OSU, and this OSU. The grad program at University of Massachusetts was brand new, so it was going to be mostly me teaching myself, like, independent studies, and I wasn't really feeling that. I didn't know if I would be self-motivated enough to thrive there. So then I was just choosing between this and the other OSU. And what ended up having me choose this one is having had conversations with who my future advisor was going to be. So I felt more comfortable in that relationship being a positive one than at Ohio State, where I wasn't going to know my advisor, who that is, or if it was going to be someone I wanted to work with. Whereas here, I applied specifically to work with who my advisor is, and so, and then I enjoyed talking to him. So it was really founded on the advisor relationship. It was a good move because I have much less advisor complaints than I think a lot of other folks I meet.
Whitney, do you have any advice on selecting grad programs or universities? You probably talked to students when you were advising undergrads on what that process looks like and how to navigate it, and et cetera.
Yeah, I definitely think that everyone pretty much touched on, great points and tips. From what I've seen and a lot of the prospective students that have reached out to me while I've been in this graduate coordinator position, I agree that connecting with faculty early is really important. Within civil and construction engineering, our faculty have been really good about communicating with prospective students. Now, I don't know how other universities deal with that, or if faculty are as open to having those conversations early. But if it's something that you want, I would definitely say, start kind of creating those emails and reaching out to faculty in research areas that you're interested in amongst various universities, because I think that can be really helpful for you kind of decide if the rapport is going to be there with those faculty members.
Perfect, thank you. This next question, let's see. Can you elaborate on the time requirements of a TA position compared to the 12 credits of classes you might be taking? So I know that you mentioned that you are a TA, Alyssa, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah. Okay, so time requirements. Luckily, OSU has a union, and that supports employees. So as a teaching employee, you are supported by your union. And so there are set hours. So I'm on a 0.4 assistantship. So it's 16-hour weeks. And you kind of catalog that and keep track of that. And if you go over that, you could talk to your supervisor and be like, I'm working more than I'm actually getting paid. How can we remedy this? So for me, that's why I'm actually doing my PhD, is to teach. So for me, teaching and being a TA is the most rewarding experience out of my PhD. So that's something that I sought out for and required kind of for myself, that I wanted to do that the whole time. In terms of time management, technically I haven't been paid to do my research. So it's a little bit of a struggle just because teaching is my passion and that's why I'm doing this. So it's, I guess, important to set boundaries and just kind of make sure that you're working the time that your assistantship is requiring. So understanding what a 0.4 is, what a 0.49 is, FTE, which is, I forgot what that stands for. But
Full-time
yeah,
employee.
there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess there are, luckily OSU has a union, so I would kind of recommend looking at grad schools that have unions because they can protect you in rights such as that if you're not getting paid enough for the work that you're doing. But it is teaching assistant employees. Like, we are definitely employees and we do a job, and we're at the forefront of education at universities.
Thank you. I don't, Annabelle, Stephanie, or Kelsong, I don't think that any of you have ever TA'd. But if you have any topics, you can reach out. Okay.
I have never TA'd, but I do want to say that I completely agree with Alyssa that part of your decision you may want to put on selecting a university with a union to make sure that you have people fighting for you and your rights. And then be sure to join your union. You will still benefit from everything that they fight for as a TA or as a GRA, but it's really important to join your union and pay your dues and support those people that are fighting for you to have things like healthcare and time off. So I just want to add that in.
Yeah, Brian, do you have anything to add about TAing?
So I have the same GTA ship as Alyssa, which is a 0.4 full-time equivalent. And so I'm supposed to be doing 16 hours a week. It is an average. And so like this week, their final papers are due. So I'm probably going to be up closer to 20, but in the last week I did 12. Balancing it, you can plan it pretty well, I think, when you know you're doing it every day. Like, I know I'm in class for 3 hours teaching lab on Thursday from 11 to 2. So I don't find it too hard to create a balance. And you're doing less coursework as a grad student, so I typically take 1 to 2 classes, whereas as an undergrad I took usually around 4 to 5 depending on the credits. So it's a trade-off there.
Perfect, thank you. Do you have any thoughts on this, Whitney?
I think everyone hit all the points.
Perfect. This next question I think would be best answered by you, Whitney. How does the process for applying for a grad school program in CCE work? And maybe we can take this question as at Oregon State, but
Yeah, I can kind of talk about both. So when you're applying to grad school, technically that is housed within the grad school itself. But I would really recommend looking at whatever school you're applying to specifically. So I'm like I said earlier, in the School of Civil and Construction Engineering. So we may have different requirements or additional requirements that other schools or the grad school itself puts on. So I know Stephanie mentioned she had some issues with coming in kind of at a later date. I have helped a lot of students get into our program not in the traditional fall term. So for instance, right now we're going to start the cycle for fall of 2021. The application is going to open in September. So it's always about a year in advance that you're going to want to start sending in those applications. I would also recommend connecting with the grad coordinator of whatever school or program you're applying to. Like I said, we all have a little bit different nuances when it comes to our applications. But the main thing is your letters of recommendation, transcripts. GRE scores are required for some programs and not for others. So again, those are just some things that you'll need to look into. And then obviously GPA is taken into account as well. So I would just say to look at the individual websites and reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions, or my counterparts in other programs.
Thank you. This next question, I think this is a nice question everyone can talk about. It's very experiential, but knowing what you know now, what is one thing you would do differently to prepare for grad school? So I guess this could look at like advice to your incoming self or steps you might have taken differently, or Yeah, so knowing what you know now, what is one thing you would do differently to prepare for grad school? Annabelle looks like she's thinking, so maybe I can ask Kelsong.
I'm really not sure because, I mean, undergrad, in terms of after or during pro school, but I know that's something I think they're not doing anymore, but it was all mostly easy. But grad school for me was when stuff got pretty difficult and it brought me out of my comfort zone. So I'm not sure what advice I would give to myself to just prepare for working longer hours and applying myself more. Just, I guess one thing is that it's not going to be an extension of undergrad. It's going to be another level of learning. So just be prepared for getting uncomfortable and being prepared to work more and apply yourself more, and be ready to, just get ready for harder material and working harder.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you want to touch on this?
Sure. I agree with what Kelsong was saying. It's definitely, at least in this, I mean, we can only speak towards civil engineering and OSU, but compared to undergrad, graduate school is a lot more difficult and a lot more time consuming. Additionally, I'd say what you can expect from classes is you've basically in undergrad and civil engineering, we learn a little about a lot. So we have 2 geotech courses, 2 transportation courses, yada yada. They're all just touching on the basics. But when you get into grad school, you really have the opportunity to dig in more. A lot of the material also becomes very theoretical a lot of the time, and you're learning the deep roots of concepts. So one way to prepare is definitely know the basics. I think a lot of time in undergrad, our sophomore year, we take strength of materials and dynamics and stuff, and we're maybe not as serious about our coursework yet, and we kind of forget about it because it's not applicable in a lot of our classes, or it doesn't seem applicable. But all of those basic concepts come back a lot, and they come back over and over and over in grad school. The other thing, I don't know if you can prepare for this, but Kelsong was saying too, you're working longer hours, and you just be prepared. It's gonna be really difficult on your life personally also. So it's really important as a graduate student, and I know everyone struggles with this, I still struggle with it, to keep the balance and to prioritize time to yourself, and exercising always gets put on the side burner, but it's really important to try and take care of yourself as well. So
Yeah, I just want to Stephanie brought out some really good points about your earlier classes. You your early notes are your friends in those classes. It might have seemed not like Stephanie said, it might not seem applicable then, but you're gonna start to apply when you go deeper into the theory and deeper into concepts. You're gonna have to remember the stuff you've learned. And if one thing I really wish I did was keep all of my engineering classwork that I did in my undergrad, because I would have referenced that a lot more. But I wasn't serious about keeping it, so I had to put the extra effort to learn from other sources what I could have just looked back into my notes about. So keep all of your notes and take good notes and make sure you can refer back to them.
Thank you. Annabelle, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I think the biggest thing that I wish I could tell myself was just to be kind to yourself, because like everybody else is saying, graduate school is incredibly difficult. And I think it blindsided me a little bit. And I put all of the things that I normally do for myself on the sidelines for the first year. And it was incredibly difficult, not just in terms of making sure I was being healthy and respectful to myself, but it also took away from my work a lot because I wasn't coming 100% to what I needed to get done during that day because I was just burning myself out. So making sure that you're prioritizing yourself first, and then when you have the crazy long list of things that you need to do, make sure you're prioritizing what is important. So yeah, I would say kindness to yourself. And then also a part of that is you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have failures, and know that that is okay and that is a part of this process, and that doesn't reflect on you. That's what this is. So keeping that in mind. And Alyssa mentioned earlier that they found a lot of joy in their teaching. Make sure that you find things in your program or somewhere on campus that bring you joy. I found that through joining some student organizations, and I think that is really important as well, to be sure that you're working hard on something that isn't just defined by your research or by a grade. That is what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Brian, do you have any comments on your process and advice and trials and tribulations?
Yeah, this echoes Kel's saying a little bit in that it's not just an extension of undergrad, and I think I did come in with that expectation of, I'd just take some classes and those classes would be a little bit harder. But really for me, the culture shock came in how long the projects are. So in undergrad, nothing was ever more than, so I didn't go to Oregon State, I was a semester system, so nothing was ever more than 16 weeks long as a project. And then I came in here thinking, oh, I should be able to get everything done within like one semester. But like if you could get your PhD done in a semester, there's a lot more people would have them. And so trying to get used to the fact that it's okay that my project takes months and months and years, and also the summer, then also the next year, and not, internalizing that as a problem was my biggest to get over.
Thank you, Alyssa. Anything?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a loaded question, right? Like, I don't know, it was kind of hard to think about, but kind of tying into what Annabelle said, I think what's really important is to talk about imposter syndrome, and something I'm sure we've all experienced it, whether or not we named it. And even if you get like a good grade on a test, it doesn't really stick because you're still thinking, I'm probably not good enough to be in here. Like that was a fluke, things like that. And I'm in my 5th year and like, we're still going through it. So I think that is a challenge. And I would kind of hone in on what Annabelle said, is just be kind to yourself, recognize that, understand your boundaries. I know for me, being a grad student is not my identity. Things that I do in grad school are, but I am not, like, being a grad student is not everything that I'm about. And that really held my flame afloat this whole time, and kept it lit, was knowing that I am outside my research as well. I've joined multiple groups. I found communities that really support me. And so it's good to, feel that flexibility, that you're not just applying for, I'm going to be a grad student, I'm going to learn everything, I'm going to defend it, and I'm going to get a title. Like there's way more in that process. And it's really helpful to allow yourself to grow, because that's kind of also the point.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. Do you have anything, Whitney? Great.
Walker, could I add one more thing?
Oh. Yeah, absolutely.
So what I wanted to say was more on the technical side of things, but I thought of it after what Brian said. Your project, your research goes on seemingly forever. And there's going to be a point, like a year after you and your advisor make a decision on some technical topic, that they're going to come to you and say, why did we make this decision? Why are we doing this way? And it's really good to have notes, incredibly detailed notes that you can go through and find all those decisions you make. And so what I've done that has saved me dozens of times, is after every single meeting that I have that's about my research, I sit down and I write up every single thing that was said and everything that we talked about, and it's all in one document. And so that's more of like a technical suggestion, but that's been incredibly useful, and I would recommend it.
Great suggestion. Did you have something to say, Kelsang?
Oh, I was just curious if you had some input on the topic.
Me. Yeah, I mean, I think what everyone said, I really think that once like things started picking up fall term, like it was really big. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really hard. And I think I didn't take it seriously enough, because I think we when you're going into grad school, people are like, oh yeah, grad school's hard. And so you're like, oh yeah, like also with Kelsang, I feel like undergrad, like obviously I was challenged at times, but I think overall the experience was, I didn't really feel like challenged to my core. And I just thought that grad school would just be like another harder, like if you were like each year in your undergrad, it gets a little bit harder, the concepts, and it's just another progression of that. But like it really challenged like everything that I have. So I think understanding that like it is going to be very hard, but you can do it. The reason why you got to there is because you are capable of it, you know, like you can do it, but it is going to challenge you. It might be one of the hardest things you've ever done. This is definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done, but like there's a reason why you're here. There's a reason why you got accepted. There's a reason why your advisor had faith in you. So just, I guess, just be ready for a very, very difficult challenge, but you can do it. It's, I hope at least.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on that too, is that
Sure.
we might seem like a lot of doom and gloom, but like just like Walker said, most like probably all of you are capable of succeeding in grad school if you are really committed to it and that's what you want to do and you're willing to put the work and time in, you can accomplish it.
I'm just thinking of questions that if we can combine some questions. So I know we've talked about TAing and GRAing and when we should talk to our advisors or when you can pick an advisor. Maybe we can just touch on this briefly again. I'm graduating this December and I'm thinking to apply to OSU for the fall 2021 term. When do you suggest I should talk with teachers for a TA or GRA position? Firstly, I would say sooner than better. You want to develop those relationships. But I think this ties into another question. What are some of the pros and cons of being a GTA versus a GRA? And again, that's a graduate teaching assistant versus a graduate research assistant. And like, what are some, and how would you recommend getting involved in undergraduate research or in order to build a relationship with a potential advisor? So I think combining these two questions, like, when should I reach out to professors or try to find an advisor? What are some tips and tricks you found useful looking for an advisor? Because ultimately, you can't force a professor to want to be your advisor. So I guess if you guys could talk about like some success you found when you were kind of picking around and trying to find someone who wanted to be your advisor and give you direction, if that makes sense. Annabelle?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, I cannot speak to GTAing at all in terms of pros and cons between the two. I am sad that I never had the opportunity to teach, but I am happy because I was a GRA through the whole process. So all I ever had to work on was my research, which made things a little bit more simple. In terms of locating an advisor and when you should start talking to them, I would say start talking as soon as possible. And in terms of tips for approaching faculty, as an undergrad, they have no expectation of you to know what the process is like. So I would say approach faculty genuinely with real interest in what they do and who they are and why you want to work for them. And I think that approach will get you the person that you're supposed to work with. And again, talk to them as soon as possible.
Stephanie?
Yeah, so I agree with everything Annabelle said. Approach people as soon as possible. In terms of like trying to get undergraduate research experience, I know it can be really difficult. You kind of have to set up a good reputation for yourself, I guess. How I ended up getting, I mean, I was an undergrad researcher for very long, but I was actually taking a master's level class in undergrad with a professor not in the structural engineering department, but I felt comfortable with this professor and I was doing well in the class. And so I approached her to see if she knew of any other professors who were even looking or if she herself was looking. And then she pointed me in some directions because I know I did reach out to another professor I had and they weren't able to point me in any helpful direction. So kind of go for the professors you already have a little bit of a relationship with. And even if they don't have a position, maybe they know of someone else who's looking. And then the other thing I would say is no matter who you talk to, know who you're talking to, like know what they do, know their research. Look online, their information is online, read their papers, know what they do, because if you go in and you just say, I want to research, and you don't know what they even do, there's no point in even going to talk to them because they're not going to think like you're serious or that you're even going to put in the effort to try and learn what they're doing. So it's really important to know your stuff when you go talk to people.
Great, thanks. Alyssa, do you have anything?
Yeah, I guess just quickly, I'm a type A person, so I wrote down all the like people who I contacted, when I contacted them, when they had responded, and I kind of had a template that I was working with when I emailed professors. Like Annabelle said, you should do it as soon as you can. And it's okay to go into those questions like, hey, I kind of have a broad interest in doing this. You know, you don't have to be dead set on a certain topic or things like that. And then do your research. Have they had recent publications that are applicable there? Mention them. Be like, I read your recent paper that is about this. It really sparked my interest, things like that. Grad school is like fed also by passion. So showing that in an email, like I think professors are knowing you don't have too much experience. That's the whole point of grad school, is to gain that experience. But yeah, I guess I was pretty organized with who I contacted. When they contacted me back, I like had a little checklist and everything. And I don't know, it really helped me. And I kind of navigated like what schools to really focus on and who had shown that they, you know, had lab meetings, is there funding available, and then opportunities as well.
Great. Brian, do you have anything?
Yeah, can you remind me, the question was about like GTA versus GRA, and then
Yeah, so I guess it was kind of a two-pronged question. They were similar topics. So basically one of the parts was like GTA versus GRA, and then I guess when is the right time to kind of reach out to find those positions, or how tips and tricks that you think of, like how to approach a new advisor and things you can bring to the table.
yeah, so I mean, I guess speaking GTA versus GRA, one of the main differences is who is going to be your boss, like who's paying you. And so as a GRA, your advisor is also your boss. And so that can complicate that relationship, but it also means you're spending all of your time furthering your research. With the GTA, so like my boss for that is the organizer of the class that I TA for then. And then my advisor is just, you know, my smart buddy who guides me in research decisions, and isn't spending money on me. As far as when to reach out and looking for opportunities, I know for me as an undergrad, I had a professor that did a lot of research in like game theory, and I thought it was a really interesting class, and so I just went to his office hours and asked about doing a research project with him. And so if you have a teacher who like teaches a topic that you're very interested in, asking them if they have any projects or know of anyone is a good way to sort of widen that relationship and explore that. Most likely your professors are like a knowledge base, and they know a lot of the projects that their peers are working on and openings that are, I mean, I'm in a biology program now, so I might talk about labs a lot. They know about like the goings-ons in other folks' labs, and so it's just another resource that you can tap into to find that information. And so maybe if the person you're very interested in you don't have a relationship with, but there's someone you do have a relationship with, you can still explore that relationship with that teacher and see what they have or know of that's available.
Perfect. I don't know if you have anything to add to this, Whitney.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, someone mentioned about undergrad research opportunities. I can only speak for civil engineering specifically, but all of our faculty have been really great about helping students actually use undergrad research as a tech elective option too. So if you're interested in having undergraduate research, you can actually utilize it for that. Now, again, that's just for the civil and construction side, but I think I see a few of those undergrads in here, so I just wanted to mention that as well.
And I second that. I've gone to the office so many times and come out with amazing opportunities, both in my undergrad and in graduate. So if you're ever feeling stuck about who you want to talk to, or if you want to find a job working for someone as a research assistant, go and talk to the CC office.
Yeah, and I'm sure that applies to any major. Just go talk to the advisors. They're helpful. They can direct you. That's a good place to start. Just be like, hi, I'm interested in this. Do you know of any professors that are doing that? Okay, so it's close to the end. I had one last question that was kind of like I don't know if it's difficult, but a little bit more wrap your head around. And basically it is, when you were making the decision whether or not to go to grad school, we all have lists of pros and cons in our head. What were some of the cons you saw, and how did you decide against them, if that makes sense? Like when you were weighing out, you're like, why I shouldn't, and what made you decide, no, I should? If that's too hard, no worries. Kelsong.
Well, I didn't really see many cons, honestly, because I saw it as the gateway to a brighter and better career in structural engineering, is to learn sort of the next level of really basics, because it is all basics, but kind of basics applied at a higher level. But I really don't think I saw any cons to it. I just saw it as another challenge that I had to accomplish to kind of step forward in my career. So that's my honest answer.
Perfect, thank you. Stephanie, do you have anything?
I'll just second what Kelsong says. If you guys are civil engineers and want to go into structural engineering, it's almost required to have a master's as a structural engineer if you want to do well in your career. So no matter the challenge, you know you can get through it one way or another. So.
Perfect. Alyssa, do you have anything?
I guess for me, financial stability was kind of a key part of my decision. Whether or not, like, if I could find a program that did have teaching assistant opportunities for me, that would fund me through. And then again, I guess basically, like, am I good enough to get in? That would have been like, you know, do I really want to go through this process? Like, I feel like maybe I won't even get in. And I don't know, I forgot like the exact quote about it, but it's just like, I guess you miss the chances that you never take, I guess is kind of like a summary of that quote. And so, I mean, like, what do you have to lose, right? For me, it was like, okay, yeah, like someone could turn me down and just say like, you're not good enough, which I definitely got those. I applied to a PhD program on the East Coast and was told I could not get in because of my undergraduate grades, which was like a hit for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to actually get into a PhD program here? But, you know, my passion kind of kept me through that, and I was able to obviously overcome that. And I don't know, that's, I guess, in summary of how I feel about it.
Great. Annabelle, do you have anything?
Mine is similar to Stephanie's, where I felt like it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. I had a lot of smaller cons, but they didn't really compare to what I thought the opportunity was. So that's what I'll say.
Great. Brian, anything?
Yeah, mine's more similar to Alyssa. It was all money worries. It's sort of like, how will I fund a grad program? And even if it's funded, you know, it's still living at like a pretty low income for another 5 years, when maybe I could just go get a job as an accountant somewhere and like not have roommates. Wouldn't that be nice? And then even if I don't need loans, the loans are still getting interest, so they're still like increasing by the time I graduate. And so there was like a lot of money spiral thinking. But I actually went to undergrad late. I took a break between high school and college and worked food service. So by the time I was graduating my undergrad, I spent like 10 years working food service. And I just really didn't want to go back to that. I know so many people that finished their undergrad and went working at, you know, Chipotle because there's no jobs. And I really thought about like, well, the point of this was to get like a job I really want. And what is that? And that looked to me like teaching at like the college level. And you have to have more than a bachelor's for that. You just do. So I had to say, oh, well, if my loans get bigger, this is where the dream's at.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know. Do you have anything, Whitney? Any thoughts? Great. Well, I think that concludes this wonderful panel. I think there was a lot of great insight, and I hope that it helps you make your decision. Again, we are Oregon State EERI. We don't have any physical or any more events this term, but if you're at Oregon State next year, get involved, reach out. If any questions pop in your head, feel free to email me. If you just type Walker, M-A-D, it'll pop up. My name's Walker Matalozzo. Just shoot me emails and I can find you answers about my experience or find you someone that I think fits your criteria. Well, anyways, have a great rest of your night. I want to thank the panel and good night. This is recorded, so I'll be uploading it to our website later this week if you want to jot back or something. But anyways, have a great weekend. It's really nice out if you're in Corvallis. Enjoy the sun. Almost to finals week. We can do it. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Walker. Yeah.
Thanks, Walker.
Bye.